James Pearce is going to be the best football player in the country this upcoming season. That and more to Friday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Friday morning edition of Locked On Vols. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. As always, I appreciate you for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch. Here today, I'm your host, Eric Kane. We got a lot to get into today. We couldn't do without our friends over at Game Time. You can download that Game Time app, create an account, put in the promo code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. James Pearce is going to be the best football player in the country in 2024, and I'm going to tell you why here in a matter of seconds. Plus, looking at the other spots from the Leo position, Joshua Josephs, a veteran. Caleb Herring has put on a lot of weight. Jordan Ross has got a high upside. Leo position in segment 1. Strong side defensive end in segment 2, where it's quantity over quality. I'll explain that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I'll explain that here in a moment in segment number 2. And then, man, you look at the interior of that defensive front. Experience talks. And Tennessee's got experience in a big way. Looking at the Tennessee defensive line, who what I think might be the best defensive line in the country and the best defensive line in the SEC all right now on a Friday Locked On Vols. You can watch us, listen to us, subscribe to us, download us, all that for free. Let's grow this show, get in front of more and more fans, tell your friends. Word of mouth travels fast, and let's get this show growing on into football season. Camp starts in a couple of weeks, and SEC Media Days is wrapped up, and man, the juices are flowing. We're about there. So, James Pearce. There's been so much talk about James Pearce over the offseason. James Pearce broke out as a sophomore for Tennessee in 2023. He had a 3-sack performance against Virginia in the season opener. Had a couple of good games sprinkled in between. Forced a pick 6 for Kamal Hadden against South Carolina. It was because of the rush from James Pearce. Had a couple of sacks against Alabama. Did some things. And then, of course, finished on bookend the 23 season just in a huge way. He had just such a performance in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa. Pick 6 included, a couple sacks, was responsible for 2 turnovers. James Pearce was a force in 23. So how much better can he get in 2024? I don't know. So everybody's like saying, well, he had 10.5 sacks or whatever he finished with last year. How many can he get this year? What's that plateau? Yeah, he finished with 10 sacks last year, but since he already got the double digits, it's really, really tough to, see a huge jump from that. I'm not saying he can't get 13 or 12 or 13, but we're not talking like he's going to get 17, right? That'd be incredible if he did. But he can refine his skills. He was still very kind of all over the place as a sophomore in 2023, and that's why he didn't play as a freshman. That's why you saw Joshua Josephs get the bulk of the looks behind Roman Harrison and Byron Young back in 2022, because he was more refined. He was more ready to play now than that of James Pearce, even though James Pearce held much more talent. And I think Joshua Josephs is a pretty good player. We'll get to him in just a moment. But if you can continue to hone in your skill set and continue to be refined, man, the sky is the absolute limit for James Pearce. He's getting stronger. He is so quick. He's agile. He's athletic. It might not make sense to you what I'm about to say unless you have a football background, but to be an edge player, you've got to have bend. That's why you see, I don't know if you see in the highlight videos whenever you put them up at volquest.com of them going through camp drills and everything. It's the defensive lineman running around the hula hoop, if you will, and then going and stripping the football, the dummy right there, but they're running around they're running the circle. It's because when you come off the edge, you got to go around that edge, but you want to keep it as tight as possible, because if you go outside or if you run way upfield, number 1, you're taking yourself out of position. Number 2, you're creating a run lane. And number 3, you're slowing yourself down. So you got to keep it as tight as you possibly can off the edge. And when you come off the edge, you bend. Say I'm rushing from the right side. My left shoulder, I'm coming in, I'm bending my left shoulder, ripping, and trying to keep it as tight as I can across the offensive tackle's hip. It sounds kind of weird when you speak it out loud. You see it on tape, you know what I'm talking about. But, boy, it's not as easy as it looks. And he's so good at that. He's so quick. He's so agile, and that's why I think that there's still some room for improvement for him, because as his strength gets improved and his mechanics get even better, you add that onto his plus speed, James Pearce is going to be a force to be reckoned with. There's not It's not by mistake that he is a 2-time preseason freshman All-American. It's not by mistake that he is the 4th highest rated player in the new EA College Football 25 video game. It's by no mistake that he's Tennessee's highest rated player on that game. He should have a big year. And it's all about positions of importance. I used to play linebacker. I love linebacker, but it's a devalued position. Running backs, probably one of the most impactful positions in all of football, devalued position. Interior linemen, devalued. Safeties, devalued. You make money by playing quarterback, by playing defensive end or pass rusher, okay, by playing cornerback and wide receiver. It's where you make your money. Why? Because a lot of those positions are islands, okay, and you're responsible for a third of the field or this side of the field or whatever the case may be. Your area for failure, margin for failure is just super, super thin. And James Pearce plays a premium position. So not only will he be one of the top players off the board in the 2025 NFL draft, could he be number one? We'll see. Will he be Tennessee's number one overall draft pick in 2025? Almost absolutely. Will he be the top SEC defender? Probably. We'll see. Again, all that's to be continued. We'll see how he does his senior year or his junior year. But James Pearce is in that premium position, and he gets sacks, and he impacts the game not only when he's not bringing down the quarterback, by affecting the quarterback's pass and timing and throw and all that. Quarterbacks, pass rushers, often viewed as the best players in football. And James Pearce with another big year, which I wholeheartedly believe he's going to have another big year because he finished last year with 10 sacks, 14.5 TFLs. He had 28 tackles altogether, had an interception, was a 52-yard pick six, 16 quarterback hurries. I expect some of those stats to even climb in 2024. So James Pearce is going to be the best player in college football in 24 because he is the most gifted and he is the most athletic, and he will produce the most stats as well this upcoming season at a premium position and at the most important position of football, not named quarterback. Joshua Joseph still at that Leo position, and I think he's had a really, really good offseason. Kind of the forgotten man as a sophomore last year with the emergence of James Pearce. You still had Roman Harrison. But Joshua Joseph, I think, is going to be a guy that plays an awful lot. He's going to be in the rotation still. Defensive line's all about rotation. But I think he's taken a step to where, sure, when James Pearce is off the field, there's going to be a drop-off, but it's not going to be a significant drop-off when Joshua Joseph steps onto the field. And when those two guys are on the field at the same time in pass rushing situations, boy, watch out. Pin your ears back and go get them. Because I think Joshua Joseph's now a third-year player in the system, gained a lot of weight this offseason, has bought into what Rodney Garner's teaching. The sky's not the limit for him, but he can be a really, really good player. Then you've got Caleb Herring, who's put on about 30 pounds of weight. Really, since he's gotten here, he's put on about 40 pounds of weight since he's gotten on Tennessee's campus. But he's putting on a lot of good weight this offseason. He's over 250 pounds. He is long. He is athletic. And now he's got a good basis to formulate his pass rush, and where if a tackle gets hands on him, he won't just fly out of the way anymore. He's got some girth to him in order to stay centered, a centered position. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Caleb Herring can do this year for sure. And then you've got Jordan Ross. Jordan Ross is the 5-star freshman, missed spring practice. He's here on campus, but he hadn't practiced yet. He doesn't even have one practice under his belt. Everybody's excited about what he will be, but outside of a pass rushing package or maybe a play here and there, I don't expect a huge role for Jordan Ross as a true freshman because you have these three veterans in front of him. Arguably the best player in the country. Joshua Joseph's a 3-year player, and now Caleb Herring, a 2nd-year vet. Who's taken a ginormous step this offseason. I think the Leo position, that stand-up pass rusher position, sometimes stand-up, oftentimes hand in the dirt, it has the potential to be the best position group for Tennessee football this upcoming season. Better than Nico at quarterback, better than the explosives at wide receiver, better than the defensive line altogether. I know that's included in that. But I think the Leo position is going to create opportunity for the guys in the secondary to go and make some plays. I'm excited about Tennessee's defensive line. We are looking at the entire defensive line here today, but the Leo position, it starts with there, and all the conversation around the country, around the Southeastern Conference, when you're talking defense, starts with Tennessee's James Pearce. More to come When we return here on a Friday Locked On Vols, it is quantity over quality at strong side defensive end. First of all, what is strong side defensive end? That's coming up next. We continue on here with a Friday edition of Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. Want to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is an app to where you can buy tickets last minute. Sometimes if you're a procrastinator like me, you can get them there even after the event has started or hours leading up to the event. But nonetheless, it's where you can buy tickets to sporting events, entertainment events in your area, concerts, comedy shows, monster truck rallies, whatever the case is, theater, Bijou Theater, Gay Street, Tennessee Theater, all that here in downtown Knoxville. Of course, sporting events at Neyland Stadium, Lindsey Nelson Stadium, Thompson Bowling Arena at the Food City Center. All that is coming up. And you can buy those tickets over there on the Game Time app. What else can you get on the Game Time app? Well, last minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, all in prices, seat views. So you can see exactly what you're paying for. The lowest price guarantee, which means Game Time's going to credit you 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper ticket in the same section on another app than the one that you can find the tickets on Game Time. Plus, Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That is LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. More to come as we continue here with this Friday edition of Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. Quantity over quality. We talked about the Leo position, and there's a whole lot of quality there and not much quantity because, well, you've only got 3 guys that are going to be in the rotation for the most part with a 4th and 5-star Jordan Ross. Let's flip it over and look at the other side of the defensive line, the other edge position, that is the defensive end position, the strong side defensive end, okay? That is the position that Tyler Barron played last year and when he had a really, really good year for Tennessee. There's no one true star at that position, but there's several guys who have either played or who the coaching staff is really, really high on. And the beautiful thing about defensive line, defense in general, football in general, rotational spots. Everybody gets so caught up in who's going to start, who's going to start, who's going to start, who's going to start. Guys, wide receiver for the most part, maybe not at Tennessee, but wide receiver for the most part is rotational. Running back is a rotational spot unless you're the guy for Cody Schrader from Missouri last year or, Ollie Gordon or whoever, around the country. Running back is a rotational position. Linebacker is a rotational position. Defensive line is a rotational position. Sometimes secondary is a rotational position. Defense is so heavily influenced by packages as well. There's so many guys that are running in and out of football games at a given time. My point is, outside of quarterback, and for the most part offensive line, we get too caught up in starters, where in football, it's truly the sum of the team, not just the 11 that are out there for play number 1. But you look at this Tennessee defensive line, I look at the strong side defensive end spot, and Tyler Barron left. I don't know what team he's on now. He's been about 4 or 5 different teams this offseason. I'm not sure what team he's on now, but he's not a part of Tennessee's team. He left via the offseason to go and pursue other opportunities. But Dominic Bailey kind of leads that group. Dominic Bailey's a guy that has started, quote-unquote, started over Tyler Barron a lot throughout their career the last couple of years. Really dating back to what, prior to or since Latrell Bumpus left the program. Latrell Bumpus played this position the first year in 2021 with Josh Heupel at the helm. Dominic Bailey he's not a flashy player whatsoever, but he's a guy that, knows what he's supposed to do. He played in all 13 games last year, had 13 tackles, had half a TFL, half a sack. He had a fumble recovery. He's a guy that's going to get you 18 snaps a game, right? You've got Tyree West, who I think has such an incredibly high ceiling. He was a true freshman last year, played in 13 games, had 17 tackles, had 3 TFLs, had 2 sacks, and he had a coming out party in the Citrus Bowl as well. Getting that start and playing at a high level and, making things really, really difficult for the Iowa offense. I think Tyree West is a guy that you saw early in his career last year as a true freshman kind of come in on that Rabbits package. And that Rabbits package is the pass rushing package where you put multiple Leos. You take this strong side defensive end spot that I'm talking about now. You slide him inside. You take a big body out and defensive tackle out like an Omari Thomas or like an Elijah Simmons or, whoever's in there, defensive tackle. You put in a another Leo, slide the defensive end down. You got 3 pass rushers on the field at the same time, essentially, is what you have. And you saw Tyree West kind of slide inside, and he would come in for that package called Rabbits last year and go get after the quarterback. But then his role grew, and he played a lot of strong side defensive end, and he's only going to continue to get better and better and better. And again, if the Citrus Bowl performance is any indication, I think Tyree West is going to be a really, really good player. So you got Dominic Bailey, who I kind of equate, and I mean this is no disrespect, and I hope that he goes out there and has just a great season. But like Kerrod Garland was there, and Roman Harrison were there forever, and they played and they got snaps. Especially Roman Harrison. Kerrod Garland's snap count kind of dwindled throughout his career. But, like, they didn't make a whole lot of plays, if that makes sense. To this point, that's kind of who Dominic Bailey is. He plays an awful lot. He gets snaps. He makes some starts. Doesn't make a whole lot of plays. So, hopefully that changes this year. But Dominic Bailey's going to play. Then you've got Tyree West, okay? Then the guy that I'm probably the most excited about on this defense, or one of the guys that I'm most excited about on this defense outside of James Pearce and some others, is Tyree Weathersby. Tyree Weathersby is a freak. I remember back when I covered recruiting a lot more than I do now, and I wasn't covering baseball. I covered his recruitment, and he was a 4-star rated prospect. Good size. He's about 6'1", 6'2". He's about 250 pounds, but he runs and looks like a tight end, a flexible tight end, a big wide receiver. I remember evaluating his tape in high school, and he'd be flying down the field on kickoff. You're a Division I SEC football prospect, and you're still playing kickoff team in high school? I mean, you do what the coach tells you to do, and I recognize that, but look, let's be real. This day and age, a lot of times it's player empowerment, so I'm not going to do that. I don't know if that was the case here, but I mean, the point is, he was out there and giving his max effort on kickoff team at the high school level as an SEC football prospect. I love that. And he was good. He was making plays. He's quick. He's strong. He's athletic. And he was going to play last year. However, he suffered a season-ending hip injury in fall camp and obviously had to miss the rest of the season. But he came back, and he was getting more work throughout spring, and he's full go. And, if he stays healthy, he's going to be a big part of this defense, in my opinion. So you got Tyree West, and this is Tyree Weathersby. So we haven't seen him play just yet. It's not made his Tennessee debut, but that's a name you need to remember is Tyree Weathersby, because he's going to impact this defensive line in the rotation a good bit here in 2024. And then you got a guy by the name of Jason Jenkins. Jason Jenkins was kind of the throw-in. He was the only signee in the February signing period a couple of cycles ago. I want to say it was the 23 cycle or 22 cycle. He was one of the first commits that Josh Heupel got when he took the job. Jeremiah Crawford was technically the first signee that he had. Then Elijah Simmons was the first commit. I don't know. He was one of the first ones, but very much a developmental prospect. Been on campus for 2 years. Very much a developmental prospect. Heard a lot of good things about Jason Jenkins this offseason. A lot of good things. He is going to fit in this defense and be a rotational piece for sure, because the development, you're always developing, but the big developmental pieces have already happened these 2 years. His body's in good shape. He's a big guy. He's learned the fine-tuning techniques of the defensive line play under Rodney Garner and Chop. He did enter the transfer portal, kind of dipped his toes in there, and then jumped out of it. He was in the transfer portal for maybe like a total of 12 hours when the spring window opened this past year. Wanted to be at Tennessee. I don't know exactly the situation, but obviously wants to be at Tennessee. And I think that he is going to be a part of this rotation. So you look at that strong side defensive end spot, again, led by Dominic Bailey. Then you've got Tyree West. Then you got Tyree Weathersby. Then you got Jason Jenkins. That's 4 guys who are going to play in that spot. And remember, in Rabbit's package or in pass rushing situations, that position often will bump inside, take out a defensive tackle spot that we'll talk about the DTs here in a moment, bump inside, bring in another Leo, and you're still on the field. I love defense. I love defensive line play. I love the creativeness that coaches use to get guys on the field when they need to get on the field. And I think that though there's not a star like a James Pearce or a well-known name even like Omari Thomas, who we'll speak on here in a moment, the quantity over quality is going to be just fine. I'll leave on this before we get into the defensive tackle talk. Just scrolling through my tweet deck, okay? And I saw actually it's not tweet deck anymore, because you can only have TweetDeck if you're verified, and I choose to not pay for verification. Well, I guess I could write it off at the end of the season, and it would be easier to talk to prospects when I'm reaching out to them. because I don't know if you know this, but you can't DM everybody unless you're verified. And anyway, that's a conversation for another day. But I was scrolling through the X, and it was earlier on Thursday before I recorded, and The Athletic posted an article like showing like, hey, let's look back at the trade deadline of 2021. It was quantity over quality for the Atlanta Braves, going out and getting Jock Peterson, going out and getting Jorge Soler, go out and getting Eddie Rosario. I would have loved to have Juan Soto, don't get me wrong. But at the time, those were not big gets. Adam Duvall as well. At the time, those were not big gets at all. However, those played huge roles in the Atlanta Braves in the postseason run down the stretch with Ronald Acuna Jr. out. None of those guys are stars, but boy, they played massive roles for Tennessee in a championship-winning season. Look at Tennessee baseball this past year. There's a lot of guys that were not stars on this team. Kirby Connell is a Tennessee star. He's not a college baseball star. But you take Kirby Connell out of the equation for Tennessee baseball, oh man, you're in trouble. You're in trouble in a big way. My point is, those guys make teams. And so I saw that quantity versus quality. I'm like, that's very similar to how I view the defensive end spot for Tennessee, opposite of James Pearce and Leo positions. So those are a couple options. That's what that looks like. Let's look at the inside. And boy, when we're looking at the inside for Tennessee's defensive line play, the one techniques, the three techniques, the shades, the four eyes, boy, you're looking at some experience. And experience talks. That and more as we conclude a week's worth of Locked On Vols here with the Friday edition, segment number 3 coming up. All right, let's make Locked On SEC your second listen when you get done here with Locked On Vols here on a Friday. SEC Media Days in Dallas, it has come and gone. But Chris Gordy's been getting in after it all week long. No better time to go back and check a lot of the interviews that he got over at Locked On SEC. Make that your second listen right behind Locked On Vols. Don't forget, if you're a Vol Club member, even if you're not a member, you can still download the app, the Volunteer Club, Tennessee's Collective. Released an app the other day. It's really, really cool. It's user-friendly. It looks really, really awesome. They got some things on there that you can sign up for. They got merch they're selling on there. They have Volunteer Club TV. Maybe you'll see this episode on there. Really, really cool. I encourage you to go check that out over on the App Store and Android Play or Google Play, whatever that is. I don't speak that language, okay? Blue text messages forever. Last but not least, let's look at the interior of Tennessee's defensive line and what that's going to look like. Experienced hogs. Again, the theme for Rodney Garner this year, and the fact that in this era of college football, when it's so easy to leave and it's so easy to go and seek other opportunities, whether it's playing time, whether it's academic, whether it's name, image, and likeness, and when you look at Tennessee's defensive line, and you play an average of 12 to 14 guys a game that's in that rotation, you're like, man, I'm getting 20 snaps here. I could be getting 45. I could be getting 45 if I went and played for, LSU or Alabama or whoever. But it's interesting. I'm sitting here and I'm working all week long, and to my right, if you're watching us to the left on your TV screen, but to my right, I've got a TV on the wall here, and I've been watching the SEC Media Days all week long. And it's funny because just before I hit record for this segment, I heard Hugh Freeze up there on Thursdays, talking on the SEC panel, and he was talking about one of his players, and I forgot who it was, and he was like, yeah, he came up to me saying, hey, man, I need more reps. I need more reps. I need more reps. He said, no, you don't. In fact, I'd like to give you a third of the 40 reps you're getting in a game right now. Why? Because you are maximizing that third. If you go over 40 or whatever the number is, boy, you're not maximizing that. And that brings me to another good point. Rodney Garner said it to the media several times. As a defensive lineman, when you hit empty on that gas scale in terms of your endurance and in terms of your durability, your tiredness, you hit empty, it's not like you can go put more gas in the tank. You go over there and rest for 5 minutes. It's not like you're rejuvenated and re-energized, ready to go back in. You're good for 2 or 3 more quarters. For a big man, a defensive lineman, when that tank hits empty, it's hard to replenish inside of a game. That's why you have such a big rotation. But the fact that this group has stayed together and they see what they can accomplish and leading the defensive line, around the SEC and the country. In fact, Cole Kubelik, SEC Network, said that Tennessee's defensive line is going to be the best in the SEC, and it should be. Tim Banks came out to start spring practice and say, hey, we have goals, and we truly believe that we're going to have the best defensive line in the country, and that caught headlines. But then you sit there and you think about it, and it's like, okay, well, let me look at this team, this team, this team, this team. Yeah, Tennessee brings back so much experience. Oh, yeah, they bring back the best pass rusher in all of college football. Let's add him into the mix. And, oh, yeah, you got a pretty good coach in Rodney Garner. It just starts to make a little bit more sense. And the fact that this entire group wants to stay together, man, it's surprising, and it's really, really cool in this era of football. Anyway, we'll get back into the defensive tackle conversation, but one of those guys that kind of keeps the group together, and Josh Heupel even referred to him as the mayor of the defensive line room, and that's Omari Thomas. I let him come back playing his 5th year. He's been a 4-year starter, and the stats, he's got stats, but they're not eye-popping. They're not huge, big-time stats. But he's got several TFLs throughout his career. He started so many games. He got a couple of sacks in his career. But he's a guy that knows where to be. He's a great leader, great ambassador for the University of Tennessee. That's why he was in Dallas at SEC Media Days. That's why he's on the SEC Leadership Council. He's a team captain. He's a guy that I want in my foxhole. He's a guy that I want leading my troops. And he's a pretty good football player as well. And he's the first name that comes to mind. So we're talking about like defensive line. You break it into sections here. We're breaking it into 3 sections here. You got the star in James Pearce with the Leos. You don't really have the no-names. You kind of have the no-names in the strong side defensive end category, but at least you got some names and veteran experience in the defensive line room at the defensive tackle position in the middle, and that's led by Omari Thomas. Can't really mention Omari Thomas without mentioning a guy like Bryson Eason, who has one of the most unique paths to where he is now. Came in, same recruiting class in 2020, going to be a 5th year. Or he's actually a redshirt senior coming up for Bryson Eason. He redshirted his 1st year. He was a linebacker in high school. Came here to Tennessee as a linebacker. They put him at defensive end. Then they slide him inside. So we went from linebacker to defensive end. Now they're sliding him inside. And he's continued to put on good weight and good weight and good weight and good weight. And he's around 300 pounds, about 280, 290, around 300 pounds. And he's got the athleticism of a linebacker. He's got the athleticism of a safety, but he's got his hand in the dirt. You talk to people over there on campus, you talk to coaches, support staff members, and all that, they cannot stop talking about Bryson Eason. And Bryson Eason this and Bryson Eason that. He's going to have an opportunity to go and play in the NFL. And if you get that Rodney Garner stamp of approval, man, that'll go a long way. And Bryson Eason right now has got it. And again, he's not going to have 30 snaps a game, but he's going to give you 25 to 26, and he is going to absolutely maximize those 25 to 26 snaps and wreak havoc across the defensive line. And with his athleticism, I think that he can do an awful lot. Then you got Omar Norman Lott, who all he did last year was finish with 6 sacks, 26 tackles overall, 6 TFLs, 5.5 sacks. He had a quarterback hurry. He had a recovered fumble. Needs to be on the field more. Okay, I would imagine. He missed about. Omar Norman Lott played in 10 games last year. He missed 3 games. If he played in those other 3 games, maybe those 5.5 sacks would be more like 7.5 sacks, maybe. But 5.5 sacks from the interior, it's really good. It's really good. He is explosive. He is strong. He packs a punch. He's kind of that energizer there in the middle of the defensive line. So when you're trying to create a pocket, and sure, you got the edge defenders coming up field and rushing up field and everything, and you see that pocket, the tackles are now backing up against them, and we're hopping back up against them, and you're creating that pocket. He's the guy in the middle that can punch it and punch it and punch it and kind of collapse that pocket. That's what Omar Norman Lott does very, very well. So you have him. You have Elijah Simmons, who, again, has been on the freaks list for the Athletic the past couple of years. Has weighed upwards of 355 pounds at points in times. He's about 338, 340 right now. Again, explosive, athletic, strong, big guy that moves really, really well for carrying his weight. He's always, his thing throughout his career has always been, can he drop the bad weight? Can he drop the bad weight? Can he drop the bad weight? He's still going to be a little bit bigger than what you want. Back in the 4-3 days and, the I formation, split eyes, ace, all that type of stuff. He's the old school defense to combat the old school offenses. He's the type of defensive tackle you want. But in this era of college football that we're in now, where everybody's spread out and you play with maybe one tight end, you play with one running back, sometimes you're open, you got 5 wide. You got to spread out and adjust. And so the big, physical, massive Mount Cody defensive linemen are no longer in the game. And he's still kind of one of those. He's a relic. But he's super athletic, and he plays, and he wouldn't be playing if he wasn't super athletic. He will not play 25 snaps a game. He'll give you about 15 to 18, okay? But you're counting on those 15 to 18 to be really impactful. And finally, he's healthy, and we'll see if he can continue to grow on what he's done. You've got David Hobbs, a former 5-star prospect who, again, just because you are playing a position that is that is just so busy with bodies. David Hobbs is a guy that we don't often talk about. Again, a former 5-star prospect, has done nothing wrong. Got in the rotation as a true freshman last year, but he's the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth name I'm mentioning when we're talking about defensive tackles. He could play strong side defensive end. He's got that athletic ability. He's put on good weight. You're not a 5-star for no reason, and he will be in the rotation this year, and he will be the starter/stud of the defensive line in 2025. That is for sure. Another guy that will have a role this year, but we'll see more of a role next year, Jackson Moy coming over from the transfer portal. And then, of course, Nathan Robinson is still in that middle interior as well. But heard a lot of good things about David Hobbs this year, thinking that he can take that step. And Rodney's not just like, it's not all scripted here saying, okay, this guy's going to get 20 snaps, this guy's going to get 24, this guy's going to get 28, this guy's going to get 16. It's, okay, let's evaluate as the game goes along. I mean, David Hobbs, if you got this matchup and you're whipping that left guard's tail every single time, maybe your 16 snaps going to go up to 26 or 27 for this specific game. You know what I'm saying? So nothing's concrete, nothing's set in stone. But I just spent 30 minutes talking about Tennessee's defensive line. And over the course of this conversation, I discussed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I discussed 16 names that I could see being a part of Tennessee's defensive line rotation this year. They'll probably trim it down to about 13, 12, 13, but 16 names that I think can be a part of Tennessee's rotation this year. If that's not a strength, I don't know what is. And because that is such a strength for Tennessee's defense, the defensive line that was so good against the run last year and they got better against the pass, you are going to help a secondary that is brand freaking new. You're only going to help that secondary continue to evolve and find its footing, no pun intended, here in the early season of 2024. That's a look at Tennessee's defensive line. I think it's going to be the best defensive line in the SEC, one of the best in the country, and I think James Pearce is going to lead the way and be the best football player in the nation this upcoming season. Appreciate you guys for tuning in here, taking part of Locked On Vols, making that your first listen each and every single day. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. That's how the show grows. Tell a friend. We got college football or Tennessee's fall camp coming up. Less than 2 weeks, so this show's getting rolling here, and we're going into the football months. Let's continue to get this in front of more and more Tennessee fans. As always, guys, thank you so much. We're a part of Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, and we'll be right back here for a Monday edition of Locked On Vols. Until then, enjoy the weekend, everybody.